Hey, look, I've got a halo. Sorry about that sun situation. I guess I could park somewhere else. Is that going to bother you? No? Okay, we'll keep going then. So, yesterday I had one follower, and today I woke up and I had 6 followers. So, I appreciate everybody that followed me. I'm guessing y'all came over here from Capturing Christianity because I left a comment over there, and I'm guessing that's how everybody found me. So, thanks. Welcome to the channel. So yesterday we talked about the universe coming into existence out of nothing and how because of that it must have a cause. And so today I want to talk about that cause and what we can infer from it. Um, First, the obvious stuff. Um, if the cause brought everything into existence, all of space, time, matter, and energy, then of course it can't be spatial, temporal, or material. So I guess that's one set of things we can know about the cause, but those are all negative things. Those tell us what the cause is not, which is not insignificant. Because I mean, if you're a naturalist, then obviously this disproves naturalism because it shows that there's something else out there in the world. So this kind of adds to what I said in some previous videos about there being immaterial minds that populate the immaterial world. So, I guess the other thing is to have brought the universe into existence, it must be possessed of some kind of unusual power. Now, usually, people will say it must be extremely powerful because it brought all of space, time, matter, and energy, and the universe is huge and it's got so much energy and stuff. It isn't obvious to me that the amount of stuff matters so much as it matters that, I mean, the big hurdle for me that would have to cross is just being able to create anything at all from nothing. Once that hurdle is crossed, I'm not sure how much additional power would be needed. I mean, if it takes a certain amount of power to create, say, one planet, would it require more power to create 2 planets or 3 or 4 or more? I don't know. It's not intuitively obvious to me. So it seems to me that the big hurdle to cross is just bringing in something into existence out of nothing at all. But on the other hand, I mean, the enormity of the universe does kind of make me suspect that it's enormously powerful. It's just less than obvious. So I would be more comfortable if I were going to be conservative and just saying, well, it's possessed of some really unusual power. So something spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and possessed of really unusual power. William Lane Craig makes some arguments about, there's 2 arguments he makes to try to show that the cause of the universe is a personal being, a person, a somebody. And I think those arguments have some merit, but I don't find them too terribly persuasive. So let me explain what those arguments are and tell you why I don't find it all that persuasive. Somewhat persuasive. One of them is that there are 2 kinds of things that we know of that could be have these properties of being spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. One is abstract objects, numbers, propositions, that sort of thing, laws of logic. And the other is personal minds or immaterial minds. And we already argued in previous videos that there are immaterial minds. So between those 2 things, obviously it would have to be a mind, because abstract things don't have any causal powers, because abstract things are not really things in the usual sense of the word. They're not substances, so they don't have causal powers. They're abstract. So the only weakness I see in that argument is the fact that we are simply drawing on what we know and coming up with the best explanation based on what we know. But if we're talking about a cause to, I mean, everything in our experience, our immediate experience, is all physical stuff. But now if we're talking about something, beyond the material stuff that brought the material stuff into existence, this must be a very unique or strange kind of being of some sort. And so it seems to me that there's a third possibility, and the third possibility is just the unknown, an unknown entity or something. So it could be, so you'd have an abstract thing, a personal being, or an impersonal, I know not what. I don't see how we can rule that out. So that kind of weakens the argument. But like I said, the argument has some strength because I mean, without having an I know not what, I guess a personal being is the best explanation if we're just going to limit ourselves to known things. So the other argument, and this kind of answers my objection to this previous argument, is that between being an impersonal thing and a personal thing should be preferred, because if you had an impersonal thing, well, impersonal things behave kind of mechanistically or deterministically. So whatever caused the universe to come into being must have had all the necessary and sufficient conditions to do so from eternity. And if it had all the necessary and sufficient conditions to bring about the universe, well, the universe should have also existed from eternity. And so the only way to avoid that is to have a being with libertarian free will, because a libertarian free will act is an act that arises spontaneously. It's not necessitated by antecedent conditions. And so you need something that freely chooses to bring the universe into existence. There's a couple of reasons I don't find that argument all that persuasive. One reason is because, I mean, as we said before, the cause of the universe existed in this timeless state at the boundary of the beginning of the universe. So it's not as if there was some duration that preceded the universe in which this thing existed. And so if it were a personal being, it's not as if this personal being just decided at some point in time to bring the universe into existence. That decision had to have always been there. And so the argument, it seems to me that the argument, if the argument against an immaterial being is sound, then it would apply equally to a being even with libertarian free will. Because even if you have libertarian free will, the necessary and sufficient conditions for bringing about the universe is that it wills to do so. So if it willed to do so from eternity, shouldn't the universe exist from eternity? I guess Craig could answer that by saying that the willing is like a simultaneous thing. The act of willing initiated time or something like that. I guess that's one way of evading that argument. But I also don't think it's necessary for, if it turns out that it's an impersonal cause, I don't think that would necessarily mean that the universe had to be eternal, because causes happen one after the other. Even if you think of it as being like a simultaneous cause, there's no duration. There's no duration prior to the universe in which this thing was just sitting there and then just brought the universe into existence. It's right there at the boundary. And so there was no delay. There was no delay from having all the necessary and sufficient conditions to bringing about the universe. It has the necessary and sufficient conditions, and the beginning of the universe is just instantaneous, because that temporal state has no duration. It's zero. It has zero temporal dimension, and so it just sits right there at the boundary. So I don't see why that would need to be pushed back into eternity. Now, I think that a personal being does make a lot of sense, because this whole idea of willing the universe into existence does kind of make a little bit of sense, but I don't see why it has to have libertarian free will. Why not compatibilist free will? In that case, all the necessary and sufficient conditions just consist of having a desire and a will to do it, just having the motive and the intention and everything to do it. That alone is sufficient to bring about the universe, it seems to me. And I don't see why that would need to be pushed back into infinity. So anyway, so basically my reasons for thinking that the cause is a personal entity comes from other arguments. It comes from the moral argument, and how the moral argument is makes sense if you have the cosmological arguments. I'll explain that later. I think I explained that before. And, the resurrection of Jesus ultimately. And I guess to a lesser extent, the fine-tuning argument. I'm going to talk about that later. And I guess that's about all I had to say today. So there you have it. Are you still there? Good, because I had one more thing I wanted to add. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, wait a minute, Sam. Isn't the Kalam cosmological argument supposed to be an argument for the existence of God? All you showed is that there's a spaceless, timeless, immaterial cause of the universe. How does that follow that it's a God? Well, I guess it doesn't. If it's a person, it certainly does. And I think it's possible that it's a person. So I guess it depends on how seriously you take those arguments. But I'm not relying on the Kalam cosmological argument alone. I don't consider all these different arguments to be like standalone arguments. None of them prove the Christian God. Together, I do think that they point strongly towards the Christian God. You can make kind of like an inductive argument for either the Christian or Jewish or Islamic God. But it's really the resurrection that kind of seals the deal for me as far as which God we're talking about. All these arguments for theism do is make the resurrection more plausible. And they also, seems to me, taken together, they definitely undermine atheism. So that's it. There you have it.